Welcome to the GoalZero Toolbox Talk series. Today's Toolbox Talk: Hand and Arm Protection. When choosing hand and arm protection for your workers, there are some important factors to consider. Of course, the first thing to consider is what's the application for your workers. Potential hazards to hands and arms include skin absorption of chemical or biological hazards, chemical or thermal burns, electric shock, bruises, abrasions, cuts, punctures, fractures, or amputations. Protective equipment includes gloves, finger guards, and arm coverings. Protecting your fingers and hands is important for your work and quality of life. Work-related hand injuries are one of the leading reasons workers end up in the emergency room and miss work. Damage to the nerves in your fingers and hands, loss of a finger, a skin burn, or allergic reaction can negatively impact the quality of your work or worse, end your career and seriously detract from your quality of life. A task-specific risk assessment needs to be carried out to determine the need for protective measures and to determine what measures are the most reasonably practicable for your organization. Effective control measures usually consist of a mixture of process or workplace modifications, applied controls, and methods of working that minimize exposure and make the best use of controls. Very often this mix includes the use of personal protective equipment, PPE. The first step in any risk assessment is to identify the potential hazards and the potential consequences of exposure to these hazards. Any cut, puncture, abrasion, heat, impact, or other hazards involved in the job will change what you choose. Knowing the type and level of protection you need is an important first step. But it can be more complicated than that. For example, if your team is experiencing cut injuries, it's best to think about more than cut level. What may look like a cut may be the result of a puncture because it's human nature to jerk your hand away when injured, causing a laceration. Factor in variables such as metal burrs that may puncture even a high cut-resistant glove, and investigate all options such as special reinforcements that might make gloves last longer, or even special palm coatings to improve grip and abrasion performance. Perhaps just as important as protection is comfort. Studies have shown that up to 70% of workers who suffer a hand injury weren't wearing gloves during the incident. The culprit in many of these cases isn't that the company didn't provide the right PPE, but that it didn't provide PPE that was comfortable enough for workers to keep it on. Ironically, it's possible to end up with a higher injury rate when you overprotect workers with gloves that are too thick, hot, or bulky for the job. This problem is now much easier to solve with the advent of technologies that offer extremely high cut protection in lighter, cooler fabrics. Instead of the bulky, cumbersome gloves of the past, you can get gloves that provide protection as high as cut level A9 and that fit with the comfort of a second skin in fabrics that are as much as 30% lighter than comparable gloves. Other materials provide coreless cut protection to keep workers with sensitive skin from developing contact dermatitis and are cool to the touch to keep hands and arms comfortable. Finding the best gloves and sleeves for workers can sometimes be a difficult task for a company. Utilize your PPE vendors who can evaluate your operation and recommend the best PPE for your tasks. All gloves should be inspected for signs of degradation or puncture before use. Test for pinholes by blowing or trapping air inside and rolling them out. While wearing gloves, be careful not to handle anything but the materials involved in the procedure. Touching equipment, phones, wastebaskets, or other surfaces may cause contamination. Be aware of touching your face, hair, and clothing as well.